The Meridian Station hung suspended in the darkness of space, like a gleaming jewel caught in an endless void. Castor Venn stood at the observation deck, watching merchant vessels dock with the mechanical precision of insects returning to a hive. He'd been traveling for 3 years since the incident on Europa. 3 years of running from a past that clung to him like a second skin. The auction house below pulsed with the energy of 1,000 transactions, each one representing futures bought and sold like commodities. Castor had come here seeking information about a lost colony, but what he found instead would unravel everything he believed about himself. The holographic display flickered to life, announcing lot number 732. The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. Gasps rippled through the bidders as the image materialized. She was enormous, easily 3 meters tall, with silver-threaded hair that fell past her shoulders like liquid moonlight. Her skin held an ethereal quality, almost translucent in places, revealing faint, luminescent patterns beneath the surface. Restraint bands wrapped around her wrists and neck, pulsing with a sickly crimson light that suppressed whatever power lay dormant within her. Seraphine. That was the name flashing across the bid tracker. Her eyes held ancient sorrow and desperate intelligence, scanning the crowd as if searching for something beyond the physical. When her gaze locked with Castor's across the distance, he felt something crack open inside his chest. The bidding escalated rapidly. Military contractors fought with corporate entities, each bid more aggressive than the last. Seraphine remained motionless, her expression unreadable. But Castor could see her fingers trembling where the chains held her. He'd spent his entire career convincing himself that he didn't believe in destiny or fate. 3 years of independence, 3 years of solitude seemed suddenly meaningless. Without conscious thought, he activated his neural link and transferred an enormous sum of credits to his encrypted account. The bid appeared on the display. Silence crashed through the auction house like a wave. Castor Venn, miner trader and salvage operator, had just submitted an offer that exceeded the combined wealth of most bidders present. Going once, the auctioneer called, surprise evident in his synthetic voice. Going twice, sold to bidder 109. The restraint bands stopped pulsing. Seraphine's eyes widened fractionally, and for the first time, something like hope flickered across her face. Castor felt his heart hammering against his ribs as security began guiding her from the platform. He'd just made an enemy of the syndicate. He'd just committed fraud, spending money he'd been reserving for his escape off-world. And he'd just saved the woman who would remake his entire world. By the time he reached the holding cells, Seraphine was waiting, her chains disconnected but not removed. When she stood, towering above him, Castor realized he'd just made the most reckless and perfect decision of his life. The small freighter Castor had purchased years ago seemed impossibly cramped, with Seraphine occupying the main cabin. Her head nearly brushed the ceiling as she moved through the corridors with surprising grace, her massive frame belying an elegant economy of motion. Castor handed her fresh clothes and protein rations, trying not to stare at the patterns beneath her skin that seemed to shift with her emotions. "You risked everything for me," Seraphine said softly, her voice carrying harmonic undertones that made his teeth vibrate pleasantly. "Why?" Castor found himself unable to lie. "I don't know yet. Maybe that's the point." They'd been in flight for 18 hours when the hunting vessels appeared on their sensors. Sleek, military craft with syndicate markings tore through space toward them, moving with coordinated precision. Castor's hands flew across the control panels, programming evasive maneuvers. But his old freighter was never designed for this kind of pursuit. "We need help," Seraphine said, studying the tactical display with unsettling comprehension. "I can feel them. Each hunter vessel is connected through quantum entanglement. Disable the central node, and the others become blind." "How do you know that?" Castor breathed. "Already plotting a course toward the densest asteroid field." "I remember things from before," she said cryptically. "Things that were taken from me." Meredith Foster's salvage station appeared on scanners like a miracle. The independent trader had helped Castor once before during a cargo dispute, and she owed him a favor. Her massive cargo hauler could provide adequate cover, and her knowledge of the nebula's gravitational anomalies was legendary. When Castor docked with Meredith's vessel, the captain emerged from the airlock with twin plasma rifles and an expression of calculated calm. She was weathered, probably 60, with neural ports glinting along her temple and scars that told stories of conflict across a dozen wars. "Hell then," Meredith said, assessing the situation with a glance. "You've got syndicate hunters 3 minutes behind you, and you're harboring what appears to be a walking legend. The Seraphine prototype. I thought that project was terminated." "It's a long story," Castor said. "We don't have time for stories," Meredith replied. But she was already moving, signaling her crew to prepare for departure. "Get her to my medical bay. We need to remove those chains if you want to survive the next hour." The chains fell away under Meredith's specialized equipment, and something extraordinary happened. The restraint bands had been suppressing Seraphine's energy signature, and as they dissolved, her presence expanded like a supernova. The lights in Meredith's vessel flickered and stabilized. The quantum signature that the hunting vessels relied upon suddenly scattered across 1,000 false traces. "The hunters are confused," Meredith reported, genuine awe in her voice. "Your girl just painted the entire nebula with her signature. They can't track anything. Give me a heading." Castor moved toward Seraphine, and she reached out, her enormous hand enveloping his own. Her skin was warm, thrumming with energy, and when she pulled him close, he felt the weight of her loneliness and gratitude. "We're safe for now," she whispered, and for the first time, she smiled. Valen Prime's ice moon hung in the perpetual twilight between two distant suns, its surface fractured by massive crystalline formations that caught and refracted light into spectacular auroras. Meredith had brought them here based on encrypted coordinates she'd recovered from an ancient beacon, suggesting the location held sanctuary for those hunted by the Syndicate. Dominic Roth emerged from the cavern entrance with scientific instruments in hand and profound bewilderment on his face. The xenobiologist had been studying Valen Prime for 7 years, mapping its ecosystem of silicon-based organisms and unusual mineral formations. He certainly hadn't expected to encounter refugees from off-world conflicts. "Seraphine," Dominic said, speaking her name with reverence that caught Castor's attention. "The readings suggest you're not simply human. Your cellular structure contains trace elements that only exist in the crystal matrix here." Kira, the local guide Dominic had hired, appeared beside him with knowing eyes. She was young, perhaps 25, with skin weathered by constant exposure to the moon's harsh climate, and a presence that suggested ancient lineage. "The old ones speak of her through the stones," Kira said, in the native dialect that her people had taught Dominic. They say she is the bridge between worlds, the one who was stolen when she was young. Seraphine's hand trembled in Castor's. I remember fragments, cold rooms, scientists' voices. They were building something, experimenting on us, trying to create a bridge between human consciousness and the planet's core network. Dominic's expression shifted to something more complex. The crystal structures here are sentient, not in the way we typically understand consciousness, but they process information, communicate across vast distances. Your genetic structure appears designed to interface with that network. They descended into the caverns, moving through passages of such overwhelming beauty that Castor found himself temporarily forgetting the danger pursuing them. Towering crystals rose like a forest of frozen light, each one pulsing with soft luminescence. The chamber opened into something vast, an underground cathedral carved by ages of geological processes. Seraphine walked to the center, and the crystals responded. Light danced across their surfaces in patterns that seemed deliberate, communicative. She turned to face Castor, her eyes now openly glowing with soft silver radiance. I can feel it, she said. The whole moon, it's alive, and it's been waiting for someone like me. Castor crossed the distance between them and pulled her into an embrace. She was so much larger than him, her frame built for strength and presence, yet she held him with surprising tenderness. Whatever you are, he whispered against her chest, feeling her heartbeat synchronize with his own. You're still Seraphine. You're still the woman I saw in that auction house and chose to save. They spent that night in a crystal chamber, surrounded by gentle luminescence. Seraphine traced his face with wonder, learning the contours of him as if reading an ancient text. Castor memorized every detail of her presence, the faint melody her body seemed to emit, the way her eyes reflected light back at him like mirrors to infinity. Kira found them intertwined the next morning. Seraphine's enormous form curved protectively around Castor's smaller frame, and she smiled with recognition of something ancient and right. The message came through Meredith's encrypted channel, a shock that reverberated through their sanctuary like a physical blow. Evangeline was coming. Evangeline, the woman Castor had loved for 3 years before the incident on Europa. Evangeline, who had disappeared into the Syndicate's hierarchy and climbed to a position of significant power. Evangeline, who had just been appointed to lead the hunter teams pursuing Seraphine. She knows you, Evangeline's message said, her voice transmitted through a quantum relay with dangerous precision. She knows everything about what Seraphine is and why you were drawn to her. Come to the cathedral temple beneath the moon's surface, or everyone you care about dies. Castor studied the coordinates with dread blooming in his chest. Dominic moved to Seraphine's side as she absorbed the information with her own growing understanding. She's part of the project, Seraphine said quietly. I remember her now. Not from my time in captivity, but from before. Evangeline was one of the architects. She chose to sever the connection. The descent to the temple took hours through tunnels that had not been traversed in centuries. The walls here were carved with images depicting impossible histories, scenes of a civilization that had reached heights of technological magnificence before choosing transcendence. Keeper Silas was waiting when they arrived, an ancient being whose chronological age exceeded 300 years, his body sustained by the same technology that had created Seraphine. She is the 7th iteration, Keeper Silas explained, his voice carrying the weight of decision and consequence. Each version was designed to carry a fragment of our collective consciousness, to serve as a bridge should we need to return from transcendence. Evangeline was meant to be the keeper, the one who would guide her, but Evangeline chose fear instead of faith. Evangeline emerged from the shadows, and Castor's breath caught. She was older than he remembered, bearing the marks of her rise through syndicate ranks. But her eyes held the same brilliant blue he'd fallen into years ago. "You were always too soft," Evangeline said to him, her voice carrying old affection and deeper betrayal. "I did what needed to be done. I chose survival over mythology. You're throwing away everything for someone who might destroy us all." "I chose to save her," Castor replied, stepping closer to Seraphine. "That's what separates us. You calculated. I loved." The confrontation erupted into something beyond words. Meredith and her team moved to engage Evangeline's hunters, while Keeper Silas revealed the truth that reverberated through the crystal chamber. Seraphine could end the conflict, but only by surrendering herself to the core network, sacrificing her individual consciousness to become a stabilizing force for the entire moon and eventually the planet itself. Seraphine looked at Castor with eyes full of impossible choice. Castor drew her close, holding her as she trembled with the weight of decision. "There has to be another way," he said. Kiera held the ancient key that had been lost for 3 centuries, a device crafted to communicate directly with the elder collective consciousness that transcended physical form. When Seraphine touched it, something shifted in the fundamental nature of the moon itself. The crystals hummed with a frequency that felt like recognition. Then the elder collective appeared, not as physical beings, but as manifestations of pure consciousness. Their presence felt rather than seen. They existed in a state beyond the binary choice that Keeper Silas had presented. They showed Seraphine that she could maintain her individual identity while serving as a conscious anchor for the network, becoming something entirely unprecedented. "You were always meant to be both," the elders communicated through the resonance of the crystals. "Bridge between worlds, yes, but also preserved as yourself. This is the gift we intended. This is why we guided one to find another." Evangeline watched this unfold with something like peace settling across her features. She had spent years denying her connection to the project, running from the truth of her own origins. Now, faced with proof that the synthesis was possible, that love and duty could coexist, she released her grip on vengeance. End of paragraph. "Forgive me," she said to both Castor and Seraphine, and meant it. The transformation took 3 days. Seraphine's form remained largely unchanged, but her connection to the moon became visible in subtle ways. The patterns beneath her skin now shimmered with the same crystalline structures that surrounded them, and when she moved, there was a sense of vast power gently contained. She could feel the entire moon now, could sense the consciousness flowing through its core. But she remained primarily herself, primarily the woman who had chosen Castor, who had learned what it meant to be free. Castor held her under the twin suns of Valen Prime, the ice reflecting light into spectacular cascades. Dominic worked with the Elder Collective to document this unprecedented merger of consciousness and individual identity. Meredith and Evangeline negotiated with the syndicate to accept this new reality, to understand that Seraphine was no longer a product to be owned, but an entity with rights and purpose. Kira smiled as she watched them, two beings from different worlds, finding sanctuary in each other. She understood what the old ones had known all along, that creation itself was born from such connections, from the willingness to cross impossible boundaries and choose love despite the risk. When Seraphine pulled Castor close that night, her enormous frame creating a fortress of warmth against the lunar cold, she whispered words that carried the weight of truth newly discovered. "You saved me," she said, "but I think I also saved you. We saved each other." Castor felt the resonance of her words echoing through the crystals surrounding them, through the moon itself, through dimensions of consciousness that were gradually becoming familiar. He'd come to Meridian Station, seeking answers about a lost colony. Instead, he'd found something far more valuable, a home, a purpose, and love that transcended the boundaries of species, origin, and fate. The Forbidden Sanctuary had become a beacon of something new, a proof that transformation was possible, that from bondage could come freedom, that across the vast emptiness of space and time, two souls could find each other and build something beautiful and entirely unexpected. The story was no longer about escape. It was about arrival. It was about coming home.